Aloha, y'all. Daniel Aaron with you. I am so excited and grateful. Excited to be sharing this with you. Grateful for you. Grateful for you. Grateful for you tuning in. Grateful for this opportunity to honor and appreciate my coaches, teachers, mentors. Been so lucky. And as I recently, quote, came out of the closet with my ordination many years ago as a minister, it's brought me to this beautiful reflection on how many amazing, phenomenal beings have helped shape me as a agent of spirit, could I say? Helped shape my spiritual journey and awareness. And, there was a moment, I'll jump right in. There was a moment, sort of the pinnacle of my relationship with Paul Lowe, where he delivered some feedback, you could say. He delivered some information. Really, I think it was he delivered energy to me in such a way that it felt like an atom bomb went off at the base of my pelvis and rippled up, and it was like a mushroom cloud went up straight through the center of me, like complete destruction, like the images I have from Nagasaki, right? The images I have from the atomic bomb in World War II. Let me get back to that though, because here's what happened. Paul Lowe, amazing teacher. I remember all the way back in, when was that? Gosh, I don't remember, 2000, something like that. I'd known about him. He came and visited, taught at Omega Institute when I'd been living there in the late 90s. And so I knew about him and I'd seen him, and I knew that he'd been like a right-hand man of Osho, Sri Bhagwan Rajneesh. And there was something clearly very special and unique about him. And one of my good friends went and did a week-long event with him. Guy from Miami went to California, did this event, completely changed his life, right, in radical ways, and clearly had awakenings from that experience, and that got my attention. It got several people's attention in our friendship circle. And so next year, boom, we were there, Harbin Hot Springs, and I remember going into the group. It was, I don't know, 150 people maybe. There were two groups. One was 5 days, one was 10 days. And the first thing, I was just like, my old shyness, I was so intimidated by it all. And yet somehow I knew that I would be wise to raise my hand and speak as soon as possible to kind of break the ice and get it out of the way. And I did so. And lest I stay too long in an early stages, I'll give you a couple highlights. My first experience with Paul that year, I was there for 15 days in a row, and we went deeper, deeper, deeper. And it was the model that Paul used at that point was he was up on stage sitting in a chair, and we were sitting in a big group around, and people would ask questions, and he would tune in, and somehow he would tune into them in a way I had never experienced before. And he would deliver information, again, maybe not so much the information, more the energy, and it would help produce shifts in them and awareness. And then in the afternoon, he would do these sound, I don't know, today we would call it sound healings. I forget the name that he used then, sounding, something like that. And it was also really curiously powerful. And in the evenings, we would meet in small groups, and we would practice being present, being real, and being honest with each other, which, as you may know, is not a socially condoned activity. Not very popular, doesn't happen very often. We are a culture who has swung, and I mean, like everyone on earth, as far as I know, most everyone, we've swung very far to being superficial, to hiding, to not being real with what's going on, being vulnerable. So that was all like radical stuff for me at the time. I'd been doing work for years, and I'd lots of therapy and self and personal development. Still, this was next level. And by the end of here's what happened in my first time with him. He recognized me. And by that I mean it was like amidst this huge group of people, he shone a light on me and elevated me in that entire group, right? And it was a little bit like I was speaking about in the anonymous guru message yesterday. Um, to be I was elevated and then accepted into the inner circle, which was a coveted position, right? And at that point in my life, I wasn't so aware of guru dynamics. I wasn't so aware of inner circle, secondary circle, outer circle. I was more in the like, ooh, that'd be cool. I want to be with those cool kids. And next thing you know, I was. And later I learned some potential other reasons for that, not just him recognizing me. However, just like with the message I gave yesterday about the anonymous guru, I got so much from this experience, not always in the ways that I expected to or thought I would, right? In that early stage with him in that first season, that first year, I was elevated, I was recognized. He really singled me out as being highly evolved in the work I had done in other places and with other teachers, and recognized me, elevated me in such a way that other people suddenly were really attracted to me. And I was like, suddenly I'm on the inner circle and popular. And um, I also, I hesitated just then because I was like, oh, do I say that? So I guess I need to. Part of what went on was in this world, there was a lot of emphasis on, again, honesty and vulnerability, which led quickly to overt discussions about sexuality. And I have a client coming up, so I'm checking the time lest I get carried away here. And so sexuality was a significant part of those groups because, well, it's an area that we tend to be stuck on and hidden about and contracted around. And so bring it forward, bring it up. Let's make it honest, real. Let's bring it to the light. And I quickly became sexually involved with a woman who was close with Paul, is the best way to put it. Kind of like they were partners, but they certainly wouldn't have used that term. They lived together at that point. She was very devoted to him, took care of him and the business aspect of it quite a lot. Beautiful, amazing woman. And her and I got very close. And later I realized, well, that actually probably benefited Paul as well because her jealousy wasn't such a factor at that time. Now, that's my story. I can't say if that's accurate or not. In any case, my connection with her also elevated me. By the end of those 15 days, I was ready to give up my part of a community house that I'd helped to create in San Diego, to stop the work I had been doing with David Wolf and traveling around the world. And I was invited, again, inner circle special, to go live with Paul in Australia and to further the work with the select group of people, which I ended up doing. And that's a whole big process. I'm going to skip ahead though, because I was deeply connected and involved with him and that inner circle and then the bigger circle for over a year, until the next summer when there was kind of the tour again, which eventually led us back to Harbin Hot Springs in California. This time, though, I was sort of on the other end of the spectrum, where the first year I was elevated, highlighted, glorified. The second year I was demoted, demolished, right? That's what I started to speak about. I went from being the angel of the group in a way to being the black sheep. And part of the way that worked, an interesting side note, during that year, my own mother, my biological mother, why do I say biological? I only have one mother as far as I know. My mother died in that year too, and which, was part of what was going on in me. Toward the end of my time with Paul, at the end of that last group, he gave me some feedback, right? And it had to do with the way I interacted with women at that point in my life, which was, in his language, obsessive and probably not inaccurate. I don't think I would necessarily disagree with that. And there certainly was a part of me where I was looking for self-validation through relationships with women, short-term, long-term, and that sort of conquest vibe that's often there with men, less evolved masculine, that conquest energy was for me a way to elevate myself or feel good about myself. That was part of what was going on. There were other parts. There was, genuine, beautiful love that happened between me and women in that period of my life. And nonetheless, Paul, in front of this big group of people, some people said later that it was the harshest feedback they'd ever seen Paul give. And he had a part of him that was ruthless. And I heard all of that and received all of that in the group. And again, the atom bomb part didn't feel like it was there in the beginning. That came later. Just immediately, I had this awareness that it was over for me. I was done. Like, not only I hadn't got to the point where I was done. I got to by choice. I got to the point that he gave me such harsh feedback. No one there would ever want to talk to me again or be around me. Whereas remember the previous year, he highlighted me in such a way that I was magnetically attractive to everybody there, or, so it seemed. And now the impression I had after that blasting was nobody will ever want to talk to me or be around me again. Of course, it didn't turn out that way, because very shortly after that meeting, several people came to me and really embraced me in ways, literally and metaphorically. The last thing I want to say about this, though, and share with you, is where it really got profound for me is, I went through the rest of that day and that night and did all the things and went to the groups and the sounding and went to the group that night and was amazed to experience the amount of love and acceptance from some people. Meanwhile, my head was exploding with all that had happened and all that I had perceived. And I went to so I live in a tent at that point. I remember tent or cabin that night. And when I was finally alone, I, just felt so lost, blown apart, right? That's when I started to experience that thing of like who I thought I was, my internal structures, my ego, mushroom cloud blown up. And I don't think I slept much that night. And I remember at about, 4:30 in the morning, I was like, all right, might as well go to the baths. And if you haven't been to Harbin Hot Springs, or I haven't been since they rebuilt, beautiful, beautiful hot spring baths there. And that's one of the crowning glories of it. So, and they're always open 24 hours. And I figured, well, I'll just go there now. And typically there's nobody there, hardly anybody there at those hours. But fascinating thing was I went in there and guess who was in the tub? Big pool, actually. Guess who was there? The only other person there. It was Paul. And there was a moment where I got in the pool and I felt no ill will. Like earlier in the day when he spoke, there was a ferocity to it. Yet when I got in the pool that evening, what I felt from him was just pure love. And I had no pain at that point and nothing, no resentment. Nothing, I guess, is what I had. I had nothing. And that launched me into a period of about 7 days that was the longest Satori experience I've ever had in my life. Satori, if you don't know the term from Buddhism, it's a glimpse of enlightenment. It's a time of enlightenment, no thing, no self, no problems, the peace that passeth all understanding, nirvana, many words for this. That launched me into the next 7 days where I was in bliss, like all the time, no worries. And I was still functional for the most part, able to do things, and realized that I was done with my time with being a disciple of Paul Lowe and being on the inner circle. And I knew I was shifting into something else, and I didn't know what that was yet. before we even left Harbin the next day, maybe that same day, actually, I think it was, I had a super profound moment where I got one of the strongest messages from Spirit that I've ever had. Came where I was sitting in a lawn chair, and I'll wrap this up. Sitting in a lawn chair, wondering like, wow, what happens now? Where do I go? What's next? And in that moment, and I was by the pool, not the hot pool, but a cool pool, and lots of people around and playing and talking. And I was just sitting there kind of in this reverie, and an acorn dropped and landed right in my hand. My hands were like this. And as soon as it hit, 5 things were immediately clear that were going to be big things changing in my life, right? And my life changed in incredibly powerful ways from that moment on. And so I'm ever so grateful to Paul, because on some level, and there's so many pieces I could take apart and explain to you, and I would love to, but the biggest takeaway, I think, for me, and maybe this will be relevant for you, I think it is just part of the archetypal human experience. I needed, you may not, I needed elevation. I needed to be recognized. I needed someone to say, you are beautiful, amazing, worthy of love. And then I needed to find that on my own, right? So when I went from the angel in white to the black sheep, right, and felt like I was cast out, that invited me to find my own worth outside of Paul giving it to me. That was powerful. And that experience, those 7 days, I did come back to having my ego be part of the picture. Those 7 days, though, changed me forever. And I'm super grateful for the entirety of the experience, so many components. And with that, I will leave it there. One of my most beloved, favorite teachers who taught me so much in so many ways. And to you, thank you for listening, watching, tuning in. I love that you are interested in vibrant living and creating more of it in your life. If I can be of assistance, if you want to chat, please let me know. I'd love to help you to create everything you want in your life. With that, I love you.